If you're grinding for a 170 right now, giving up your weekends, you're paying for prep, sitting the test over and over, I've got to tell you something nobody who runs this test will. The 170 you're killing yourself for is not worth what it used to be. The LSAT got easier several different times, leading to rising LSAT medians. And there's only one move left on the board that's still yours, which I'm going to get you to. But first, you've got to see the whole board. For 20 years, a 170 meant the top 2.5% of everybody who took the LSAT. That wall did not move. Then, in the last few cycles, it slid up to about the top 5%. So the number of people clearing a 170 roughly doubled. And that is not supposed to be possible, which right there is the tell. The LSAT is equated. It's built on purpose, so 170 means the same thing every year, no matter who is in the testing pool. That held for about 2 decades and then it broke. And so either every pre-law in America got dramatically smarter at the exact same time, or the number got hollowed out from the inside. This is how law school admissions inflated its own scores and why the machine that did it is now running with nobody's hand on the wheel. Now, I'm not saying that anybody sat in a room and plotted this out. That's not the story. Every single one of the changes to the LSAT had a reason, like the pandemic, a lawsuit, reasons of access and convenience. So the story is that the system is rigged, but not rigged by people. It's rigged by incentives. Every one of these changes did end up, though, pushing your score up, and not one of the people who made the changes loses a thing when scores inflate. Now, when the incentives all point one way and nobody's penalized for following them, you don't need a conspiracy because the structure does the work, and that is what is rigging the system today. The first thing was the pandemic. LSAC never undid some of those changes. In 2020, they couldn't open up test centers, and so they shipped a remote version of the LSAT and did a couple of things to it at the same time. They cut one of the scored sections. They went from 4 sections down to 3. They also removed the unscored experimental section as well, the temporary LSAT flex format. And so the people who used to fall apart in the final hour of a 5-section grind stopped falling apart. The pandemic, of course, ended, but LSAC kept all those changes anyway for longer than perhaps they needed to. Then, in August 2024, due to a lawsuit, LSAC removed the logic games section, and they replaced it with a second scored logical reasoning section. For background, in case you're not aware, there were 2 legally blind test takers who sued and for the removal of logic games because they contended that they couldn't benefit from drawing diagrams the way other test takers could. So this is not a villain story here. It's really a civil rights settlement, but the effect on scores was real nonetheless. Logic games was one of the great separators or differentiators on the LSAT. A lot of people cratered their scores because they couldn't handle it. Others got perfect scores, and so it was a great distinguisher or separator along that spectrum of 120 to 180. And so you swap logic games for a second scored logical reasoning section. The consequence is it's easier to get a top score because there's less material for you to study. Another big change to the LSAT is that they went from offering it only 4 times a year to 8 times a year. So you've got more attempts. They also removed some of the LSAT retake limits. And considering that only your best LSAT take counts, that means more incentive to retake, more people getting higher scores. And so if you take the LSAT 3 times, the worst 2 vanish, and you post a number that you might have never hit had you only taken it once. And about a quarter of takers at least retake the LSAT. So you run that across the entire population, and all the medians drift upward. You've also got accommodations. Approvals went from about 46% in 2012 to roughly 98% in 2022. Now, LSAC's own research from a 2017 paper found that accommodated scores tend to predict higher first-year law school grades than the students themselves go on to earn. Of course, they also moved the LSAT into your house. It used to be stressful in person at a testing center on paper for decades, from the start of the LSAT, of course, several decades ago, and then they moved it to at-home remote for the pandemic and have maintained the at-home version of the LSAT until this coming June, which will be the final in-person administration with rare exceptions. Of course, taking the LSAT at home with webcam software is not the same as taking it in a room with human proctors. I'm not saying that cheating's everywhere. Nobody has clean numbers, and most people take this honestly, but there is an opening of vulnerability that some folks have exploited, which is part of the reason LSAC is going back to in-person for almost everybody starting in August. And so lots of different reasons, lots of different changes to the LSAT, but all pointing in one direction, making it easier to get top scores on the LSAT. Now, the extra time accommodations thing is a separate issue, so I want to treat it separately, and I want you to notice that. I've made this argument before, and I've gotten a lot of pushback on this one. And the pushback and the feedback I got was good enough that I want to answer all of it here. What I'm not saying is that nobody's faking. I'm not alleging widespread fraud here. But there are some people who I suspect are taking advantage of the ease with which you can get extra time accommodations. And they are casting a light on those who deserve accommodations and casting doubt on them. If LSAC's answer to nearly every approved request is the same, giving the people more time, they're not really individualizing anything here. They're defaulting. It's like a factory setting. Extra time is right for some conditions and it's the wrong solution for others. But if they just give everybody extra time, you get the same over-prediction that LSAC has found, because the fix, the solution, is not really matched to the need, and that's a failure of the institution. I'm not blaming any individual student for this. Now, some people say the argument that I'm making here hurts the students I claim to care about because disabled students already live in an impossible bind. If you ace it with accommodations, you're called a cheater. If you struggle and take it without accommodations, you're not getting a good enough score. And that's an impossible situation. You're between a rock and a hard place. And I think it's an imperfect solution. There's no perfect solution here. But schools are sensing that some scores run high with no way to see which, and so the doubt smears everybody the same. The sloppy measurement is what is manufacturing that label where some folks get called cheaters. But bottom line, though, we do have this issue where scores are rising across the board and nothing's going back anytime soon. Now, LSAC, of course, they run the test. You're paying for every time that you take it. They've roughly doubled the number of times you could take the LSAT each year and loosened the retake cap. And so now a quarter of those taking the LSAT come back to take it again. Now, LSAC is, of course, a nonprofit, so I'm not going to say they're profiting directly, but a nonprofit does still run on revenue, and they're still growing. They still answer to their budgetary needs. So offering it more times means more money coming in through the door. They are not a neutral party. The schools also want higher medians for their prestige and for their yield, and they get that with the fact that they can report only the highest score on your record. Now, for years, the biggest reason law schools chased LSAT medians was the U.S. News rankings. Then in 2023, a bunch of top law schools boycotted the rankings, and so U.S. News reduced the weight of the LSAT. It's now down to about 5% of the formula, with more weight dumped onto the bar passage rates and employment outcomes. But the thing is that LSAT scores predict law school grades and bar passage rates, which then carries over into employment. And so LSAT scores are still either directly or indirectly a massive part of the U.S. News rankings. And the thing is that even with law schools boycotting the rankings, the medians have kept climbing regardless. Even in just a single year, the LSAT medians jumped nearly 2 points across the board on average. That's going from a 168 to a 170 or a 170 to a 172. It's pretty significant. The inflation is not even chasing any single incentive anymore. It's a structural change. The LSAT being shorter, the endless retakes, the reporting of the highest scores, the removal of logic games, every one of these factors keeps increasing the number up on its own long after the original reason for it stopped mattering. No one's even steering this thing and it's still accelerating. And so logic games is not coming back. That's due to a court settlement. Nobody's re-implementing the retake limits. No one's ever going to reflag accommodated scores, nor should they. You don't fix a machine that runs on itself and it costs its owners nothing to ignore. It's the floor now, and it's why the percentile numbers are only moving one way, and that way is up. And so if you want help getting your LSAT score up, because that's the only variable in this whole game you still control, your GPA is already fixed, your work experience is what it is, the LSAT is the only number that you can improve at this point, most likely, unless you're still in high school, in which case, focus on your college grades, focus on getting into college. the LSAT's the biggest needle you can still move. And so if you want my help getting your LSAT score, I've got a lot of free resources for you. I'm also offering a free LSAT tutoring lesson for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free tutoring lesson with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. I've also put together a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. You can grab that free cheat sheet at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. The link for that as well is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. That is an open offer for everybody watching this now and later. I see a ton of questions here in the chat. I will get to as many of those as I can. I see Nick says, hey, Steve. Hey, Nick, welcome. Simon Veer is asking how to do a diagnostic LSAT. So to take a diagnostic LSAT, to take a practice test, you go on the LSAC Law Hub website. You take them in exam mode, not self-paced mode, because you want the strict timing. So exam mode, not self-paced. You do 2 sections back to back, 35 minutes each. You then give yourself a 10-minute break. Then you do 2 more sections back to back, and that's the test. So 4 sections of 35 minutes each with a 10-minute break in the middle. It's going to take you about 2.5 hours end to end. Don't pause the clock. Don't go get a snack. Don't chat with your friends. Don't check your phone. 1 sitting, 2.5 hours. That's your practice test. And the results of that will often be discouraging. They'll tell you what you already know, which is that you have not yet learned the language of the LSAT, but of course you can. You can improve significantly from wherever your starting point is. I personally increased my own LSAT score from a 152 to a 175. It took me an entire year, and at least half of that was a complete waste of time. If I had done it properly, I could have knocked it out in just a couple of months, because the LSAT is ultimately a test of pattern recognition. If you can spot the tricks and traps, you can avoid them. It all comes down to understanding how the test makers think and seeing it from their perspective. And once you do that, everything changes. And so if you want my help, I see Akila's asking about programs for studying. We offer customized, personalized coaching programs to help you get from your current starting point up to your goal score on your time frame. We look at where you're currently at, what your goals are when you're taking the LSAT, and then we personalize a program to help you reach your goals by your target test date. So there's no one size fits all. It's all personalized to your schedule, your availability, and your goals. So if you want to talk through the particulars, the best way to do that is to book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me, and we can discuss all of that together. The link to book that free tutoring with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video, pinned in the chat, in my bio as well. We'll typically set you up with private one-on-one coaching on a weekly basis. You'll get a customized study plan in collaboration with your coach. You'll also get access to live small group sessions. Those are 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday, but they're all optional and all recorded for any that you can't make live. And you'll also get access to our comprehensive on-demand course as well. And so those are the general components of the program, but of course we'll personalize it to your situation. Jazz is asking, do you think law schools are truly holistic, or do the numbers only matter first, like LSAT and GPA? So law schools will claim they're holistic because it sounds nice. It's a nice story to tell, but the data tells a different story. The data basically indicates that your LSAT score and your GPA will almost entirely predict admissions outcomes and scholarship offers as well. I'm not going to say it's a perfect one-to-one, because there are exceptions, like if your parents donate a building, for example, or if there is a family tradition at that school, the legacy factor or nepotism factor. And softs do play a little bit of a tiebreaker role here and there, but for the most part, it's your LSAT score and your GPA. And you could have in the past perhaps attributed some of it to affirmative action, but with the Supreme Court ban on that a couple of years ago and the federal government's crackdown on that, they're suing a number of colleges and universities over that as we speak, investigating graduate schools in particular. The affirmative action boost is not nearly what it was before. Law schools are pretty scared of the government on this. And so it's really LSAT GPA first and foremost. And you can also look at user-submitted data on the website lsd.law to see that in particular. Nick says, on my diagnostic, I didn't realize that there were 5 answer choices. My screen was too small. I thought there were only 4 choices, so I bombed that. Whoa, haven't heard that one before. But good thing you learned that on your diagnostic and not the real thing, right? So for those who aren't aware, there are 5 choices on the LSAT, not 4. And choice E as in echo is the answer roughly 20% of the time. And so you want to make sure that you're evaluating and considering all 5 choices. And you want to learn the details of the LSAT before test day itself. And that's the thing, is that when you're on your own, you don't know what you don't know. And so you should know there are 5 choices on the LSAT. There's no guessing penalty. The LSAT is strictly timed. And starting in August, you're taking the LSAT in person at a parametric testing center with rare exceptions. And make sure that you're studying off of a proper computer. Don't do LSAT questions on your phone. Don't do them on a tablet. On test day, it's going to be on a computer. I see user 6922 is asking about the tutoring. And so, yeah, I did just cover the tutoring question, but I'll say this so I don't spend too much time repeating myself here. If you want to talk through the particulars on the tutoring with me, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson at unpluggedprep.com/start. We could talk through what your personalized program could look like. Ilias is asking, any tips for taking the LSAT in 10 days? Currently scoring around a 167 and hoping for 170 plus. Okay, so I don't like to make outlandish promises or guarantee overnight success. To promise a boost of 3, 5, 10 points in 10 days is not something I can guarantee you. What I'll say in the short term is grab the free LSAT cheat sheet linked in my bio, linked below the video. That's a quick reference I put together on everything logical reasoning and reading comprehension. You could print that out or put it on your phone as something to scan at while you're in line for coffee, while you're in the bathroom, just getting a refresher on the different sections and the different question types. If you're looking for a quick boost and you haven't achieved it by the day before the LSAT, I would say maybe you want to postpone or retake it in August just to give yourself a bit more time. And I know that nobody ever wants to push the LSAT back, but if it would give you a couple more points, it's well worth delaying your LSAT, because maybe getting a 170 plus versus a 169, the 170 looks way better than the 169, and law schools themselves are susceptible to the bias in the optics of how those numbers look different, 169 versus 170. And so I would highly suggest giving yourself till August if you need it. And the good news is that if you take it in August, you can still apply to law school at the beginning of the cycle in the fall regardless. So it won't even delay your applications. Yeah, Nick, glad it's all helping. Awesome. Appreciate that. Lauren's asking, I've studied on and off, but not too well for the past few months since I was busy with school. Planning on taking August and studying every day until then. Any advice? Is it doable to get to 165 versus 170? Well, I'm curious to know, where are you scoring right now? Have you taken some practice tests before? Were they strictly timed? That'll help me determine how much you could improve between now and August. But instead of asking, is it doable, or answering, is it doable, because the truth is I don't really know if you're going to get there or not. What I can do is give you my best advice to try and help you get there between now and then. And so if you're taking the LSAT in about 2.5 months, let's just call it 3 for simplicity, even though it's less. I like to divide LSAT prep into 3 major phases: accuracy, pacing, and endurance. Accuracy is building a strong foundation in the different sections and the different question types, as well as drilling questions by type to better understand the proper perspective from which to view each section and each question type. Devote 1 month for that. Then 1 month for pacing and time management, doing individual 35-minute sections to work on how you're allocating time over the course of the section. Then finally, you have E4 exams and endurance, doing full-length timed practice tests. 1 month for that. Ideally, you're doing at least 10 to 15 timed exams before the big day, so that test day itself will feel like just another run-through, and you've done it all before. And so 1 month for foundational work, 1 month for individual sections, 1 month for full-length exams. And of course, consistency is key as well. And so If you were a student in one of our coaching programs, we'd set you up with private one-on-one coaching every single week. You could book those sessions directly on your coach's calendar at the time that's best for you, any time of day, any day of the week, including evenings and weekends. We'll also give you a custom study plan in collaboration with your coach, laying out exactly what to do every single day. Then for supplement, you'll get access to live small group sessions in the evenings, all optional, all recorded for any that you can't make live, and you'll also get the comprehensive on-demand course as well. Idea being, we're supporting you with different kinds of guidance in different ways: live one-on-one, live small group, custom study plan for your homework, the on-demand course for resources and guidance that you can access on demand, lessons and explanations covering every LSAT section and every LSAT question type. And the thing I love about the August LSAT is that you take it in early August, you get your score back at the end of August, and you can then still send in your applications the second they open in the fall. And it's better to apply early than to apply later, because when you apply earlier, it's easier to get into law school, and there's also more scholarship money available as well. When you apply later in the cycle, they've already given up some of the seats, and they've already given out some of the scholarship money. And so if you want to maximize your odds of getting in and getting scholarship money, better to apply earlier than later, all else being equal. And so 2 months could be enough time. I recommend typically a minimum of 2 to 3 months, and ideally giving yourself 5 to 6 months to reach your fullest potential. Of course, you can do it in less time, but you're going to want to devote more time, and we'll put you in more of an accelerated boot camp style of program rather than a slow and steady approach. And so a lot of our students will do live coaching 7 days a week just to maximize the increase they can get. And I don't want you to burn out, of course. So we do typically want to give you at least 1 or 2 days off per week. We adjust your study plan accordingly. We don't want you studying 8 hours a day because that is a recipe for burnout. But we also want to maximize the score that you can get. And we do ask a lot of our students, and that's how we get the results that we get. I see John's asking, I'm a current student studying political science, getting my BA this winter. When should I start studying for the LSAT if I wanted to take it next winter or next spring? So if you're talking about taking the LSAT in, say, February or April of 2027, my question would be, why not start now? The students who get top scores typically allow more time than those who get lower scores. I mean, to get a 170 or 175 plus, they're typically giving themselves at least 5 to 6 months. And so if we're defining winter broadly here, I mean, you could take the LSAT in November in 5.5 months. You could take it in January in roughly 7.5 months. And if you're going to be going away over the summer or taking time off in August, for example, for whatever reason, then maybe you do want to start now and you want to get familiar with the different LSAT sections and the different LSAT question types. There are 15 different types of logical reasoning questions. You've got strengthen, weaken, flaw, parallel, resolve, and so on. There's also reading comp to work on. That's a whole third of the test. Then you've got pacing and time management, doing individual sections and full-length exams to build up your endurance. It's a lot to cover, so we want to start earlier rather than later, because the LSAT's a test of pattern recognition. It's not a test of memorization or cramming. And so the more time you can give yourself to get the lay of the land and learn the different sections and different question types, the higher the score that you're going to be able to achieve, because you don't memorize this, you don't cram it. It's all about the patterns of the test, being familiar with the methods of reasoning. And so the more you can familiarize yourself with those, the more you'll be able to relate a new question to those you've seen in the past as well. So basically, when I'm looking at a logical reasoning question or a reading comp passage, part of the reason I can solve it faster is because I've seen so many like that one in the past. I'm not really reasoning through it for the first time. I'm just pattern matching the question in front of me to the many others I've seen like it before. And so I'm not reasoning through it from first principles on the test, and that's how I solve questions faster. That's what I want you to be able to do as well. Just Be Nice is asking, do you help with reading comics sections as well? Guessing you mean reading comp, like reading comprehension. I do help with that as well. Of course, it's a whole third of the test, and a lot of people say that you can't improve at reading comp, but the truth is they're wrong. You can improve significantly on reading comp. reading comp's like a big logical reasoning question. It's the same principles at play. And so what we do is we teach you the most common reading comprehension passage structures. There are a limited number of them, and those are independent of the topics that they're asking you about on the LSAT. And so we teach you those common structures so that when you see a new one, again, you can do that pattern matching. Anna is asking, how many full tests should be implemented in your regimen, especially in the last month prior to the test? I recommend at least 10 to 15 exams in total. Ideally, you're doing 1 or 2 a week. If you're busy with other stuff like work or school, maybe 1 a week. If you've got little else going on and you're studying essentially full-time, maybe closer to 2 a week. Scanning through for what else I might have missed here in the chat. Feel free to keep those questions coming. And by the way, for those just joining, I put together a free, easy LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep, help you with a quick reference on everything logical reasoning and reading comprehension. You can grab that cheat sheet at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. Raphael's asking, do top law schools use LSAC's scores? Do you mean the LSAC GPA? Because if so, yes. What LSAC does is they take your undergraduate GPA, they take your transcripts from all the credits that went into creating your undergraduate GPA. They do their own calculations on that to equate it. And then they do report that to the American Bar Association, which in turn is where US News pulls their data from for inclusion in the US News Law School rankings. And so keep that in mind, that they're using all of your credits from your undergraduate GPA when putting together your LSAC calculated GPA. And what some folks will do if their undergrad GPA is lower than they would like is they'll take some community college classes over the summer to get some easy A's and boost it up a little bit. Schuling's asking about LSAT scores. What's mine and what's the top? So the highest score on the LSAT is still a 180. Yes, that's true. It's on a 120 to 180 scale. I personally got a 175 on my own official LSAT. Started off at a 152. Took me an entire year to get to the 175, and at least half of that was a complete waste of time. I really did not study efficiently at all. Don't learn from my don't learn from my example. Learn from my mistakes instead. If I had done it properly, I could have knocked it out in just a couple of months, because the LSAT is all about pattern recognition. And so what I try to help you all do is study for the LSAT more efficiently. Rather than just taking tons of practice tests, I help you build that foundation first, learning the different sections and different question types. Or what I was saying earlier about building the strong foundation, then taking individual sections, then full exams. That's the basis of the personalized study plans that we create for our students. Julie's is asking, I have an awful GPA. It's a 3.2. Did very well on the LSAT, got a 176. Is it worth applying broadly to the T14? I mean, look, I'll never say don't apply to the T14. But truth be told, if both your LSAT and your GPA are below the medians, it's a long shot and probably not worth the application fees. However, if at least one of your numbers, at least it is above the medians, then it's worth shooting your shot. And so in your case, the GPA is a 3.2. That's way below the GPA medians. But the LSAT score of a 176 is above the medians. For reference, the top 14 law schools, their GPA medians range from 392 to 399. Their LSAT medians range from 170 to 174. And so if your GPA is a 3.2, it's roughly 0.7 below on the GPA side, which is significant. But the LSAT being at a 176 is above the LSAT medians of 170 to 174. And so because the LSAT's above, I'd say it's worth applying and see what happens, but I would not over-index on any one T14 school or even the T14 broadly. I would blanket and apply to all of them, but I would also apply to some law schools outside of the T14 as well. Hey, Vicky, I see Vicky's got a question here. Vicky's asking, can you schedule for the August and September LSATs now and then cancel September if the score comes back over 170 on August, if that's the goal? Yes, I would. And the cool thing is that if you withdraw your LSAT registration, law schools will never even know that you were signed up for that LSAT in the first place. They'll never see it on your record. And so it's worth registering just in case so that you don't miss the deadline, so that you've got the registration there if you need it. And also because of a recent LSAT policy change, which is that the order in which you register for the LSAT also determines the order in which you're able to schedule your LSAT. And so if you register for the LSAT early, you're going to be able to schedule your specific LSAT test date and time early as well. If you register late, you're going to only be able to schedule late and you'll get slim pickings. And this is more important than ever because the LSAT is going back to in-person only, with rare exceptions, starting in August. And so if you register for the LSAT late, then you're not going to be able to schedule until after everybody else. And then you're going to have to commute farther to take the LSAT in person. And you don't want that. You don't want to be waking up super early on LSAT test day to drive 2.5 hours to some far-flung LSAT testing center when you're already stressed out about taking the LSAT. It's unfortunate, but they've set up the system where you are incentivized to register and to pay them sooner, and you also can't get a full refund if you withdraw late after the deadlines. So to Vicky's question here, do they charge you the fee twice and not refund it? So there are some deadlines where you can withdraw or change your test date and maybe get some kind of partial refund where they keep most of it. But long story short, they're going to keep most of the money regardless. And if you withdraw late, they're going to keep all of it. And you could try to fight them and maybe get something back, but it's a pain. But at the same time, it's also a drop in the bucket compared to the cost of law school. And so if you can afford it, I wouldn't sweat it. If you have difficulty affording it, then take some time on the phone and try to fight with them about it. But I would say register early if you can, just because then you'll have access to better testing dates and better testing slots and better testing centers. And there is limited capacity, more so than you would think, even in major cities. Amani Sawari is asking, can you still get scholarships if your LSAT score comes out after your school's application deadline? My score comes out 3 weeks after submitting my law school application. So law school application deadlines are the deadlines, meaning that they want your application to be complete, including your official LSAT score. That being said, sometimes the deadlines are fluid and flexible rather than fixed, meaning that if you just call the law school and say, hey, I just took the X LSAT, I just took the June LSAT, and I know it's late in the cycle, but your school's my top choice. Are you willing to consider my June LSAT score when the result comes back? And see what they say. But technically speaking, for your application to be complete, they do want the LSAT score on record as well. And Amani, I see that you booked the session with me for the free tutoring as well. That's awesome. You can definitely look at the cheat sheet. In the meantime, check your email for the cheat sheet. You should have gotten it when you signed up there. And for those who want to grab the cheat sheet, it's available at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. Just scanning through for more questions here I might have missed. Ilya is asking about study abroad transcripts. If they're part of what got you your undergraduate bachelor's degree, then they're part of comprising your GPA and they'd have to be included. I see Savannah says, got a 162 on the June 2024 LSAT. That was the last LSAT with games. I'm now aiming for a 167 to 170. Awesome, love to see it. So yes, of course, logic games are no longer on the LSAT. It's now 2 scored logical reasoning sections, 1 scored reading comp section. And so logical reasoning is 2/3 of the test. Any gains you make in your understanding of logical reasoning are doubled across the 2 sections. So the good news is that there is less material to study now. You can double down on logical reasoning and focus more on that. Hopefully that's a beneficial change for you. Sarah's asking, is drilling enough to take me from the 150s to the 160s? I'm not sure what to do anymore. I'm stuck. So is drilling going to be enough? I can't say. I don't have enough context on your situation to be able to advise you on that. Drilling is part of LSAT prep, but there's a lot more beyond that. And a lot of students these days are spending too much time on drilling and not enough time on the other stuff. I mean, there's also doing individual timed sections to work on your pacing and your time management, and then full-length exams to build up your endurance. And so one thing we'll do for students who come to us after having done a lot of drilling is we'll see, okay, well, their individual question accuracy might be okay, but their pacing is shot, their endurance is terrible, and so they fall apart on the final section of the exam because they don't have the stamina. And so we want to fill in the gaps in terms of what's missing, because when you're studying on your own, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know why your score is staying low and why you've plateaued or why you're stuck. And it's oftentimes because you're not working on the skill of actually taking the test. You're just drilling individual bite-sized questions. And so this is something that we should talk through together. If you haven't already, you can book the free tutoring lesson with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link to book that is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. Happy to talk through your study plan with you a bit more if we haven't had the chance to meet already. I see Vicky's asking about whether to take the August LSAT or not due to other family happenings that same week. Does it make sense to just take September, or should I just give it a try if possible? Okay, so if you've got other family stuff happening that same week, then yeah, maybe you should focus on September. The question would be, what is the other family stuff, and to what extent will it distract you? I mean, if it's just going to a family reunion or something and it won't take up too much mental headspace, then you could still take the LSAT. On the other hand, if seeing family is stressful or it's going to eat up the whole week, then maybe you say to yourself, you know what, I can't balance both taking full practice tests and the actual thing and have my mind in the right place combined with the family stuff. Maybe I'll just focus on September. Ultimately, I would say don't decide yet. You sign up for both August and September to have better scheduling slots. You take your practice test, you see where you're at in the final week and make a game day decision. And again, if you withdraw from the LSAT, law schools will never even know that you were signed up for it to begin with. So the good news is you don't need to decide yet. You can wait and see. I see Lucky's asking, did my second practice testing got up to a 169? My first diagnostic was a 162. Trying to reach a 175, but feels like it'll take too long for the September LSAT. Okay, so you've already improved 7 points from diagnostic to the second one. That's pretty great. Congrats on the increase so far. Let's get you another 7 points. In terms of it feeling like it'll take too long for September, I'm not sure what you mean. Do you want to elaborate on that? I mean, you've got 3.5 months to improve another 6 points. You've already improved 7. And of course, it's easier to go from a 162 to a 169 than from a 169 to a 175 for sure. But you've got a lot of time to figure it out. And so the question is, how are you studying? What resources are you using? Are you just self-studying with Law Hub and LSAT for Dummies, or are you taking a course? Are you getting personal coaching? Are you getting some live feedback on what you're getting wrong and why you're getting it wrong? Are you drilling sections a lot? Are you doing timed sections? Are you taking full exams? Are you noticing trends in particular question types, particular methods of reasoning? Are you able to identify the gaps in your understanding? Are there foundational gaps in how to approach a particular LSAT section or question type, or are you running into pacing issues? I mean, these are all things that we can talk about together, but I'm just trying to give you some ideas or dig into what the mistakes might be here. So try to give that some food for thought here. Try to think through it a little bit and see what the gaps might be. And if you want to talk through it together, we can. Josie's asking, I have my first LSAT on June 6th. Any tips on how to maximize my studying over the next few weeks? So I could answer this a couple different ways. One way to answer it is to say, okay, well, let's make sure you're taking enough full exams, enough full practice tests, 1 or 2 a week, with detailed review of those exams using a technique like the Socratic review method, getting down to the root cause and what you're getting wrong and why you're getting it wrong so that you can avoid making the same mistakes again. For example, is your mistake coming from the question stem type? Is it coming from the answer choices, like the tricks and traps there? Is it coming from your reading of the argument or the passage to begin with? So what kind of root cause analysis are you engaging in when you get a question wrong or you have difficulty with it? And to take a step back, how long have you been studying for? Has it been 1 month? Has it been 3 months? Have you given yourself enough time to establish a strong foundation to begin with? How close are you scoring to your goal score. And if you're not that close to your goal score, might you consider pushing it back or retaking it additionally in August to give yourself more time to get familiar with the exam and get closer to your goal score? I see a follow-up here. Josie's saying, I've been studying since mid-January, but I've worked full-time throughout. So you've been at this for about 4 months, but working full-time throughout. So I'm guessing that maybe you have not had as much time to study as you might have liked to. So then the question becomes, will giving yourself roughly 10 days or so be enough time? Or do you want to give yourself another 2.5 months to give yourself more runway to get to your goals? And then the question is, how close are you to your goal LSAT score? Of course, I don't promise overnight success in just a week and a half or so, but if you decide to go for the August LSAT and you want to give yourself some more time, we could jump on a call together and talk through what your study plan could look like this summer. If you want to book that free tutoring with me, the link to book it is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. And then, of course, if you do decide to go for the August LSAT, you still can apply to law school the second the applications open in September. Even if you take the LSAT in September or October, to Vicky's question here, those are not too late. If you take the LSAT in August or September or even October, you're still applying plenty early in the cycle. There's still plenty of scholarship money available, still plenty of seats available as well. We really only start talking about disadvantages of applying later when you're looking at, say, January or February, but anything August, September, October, even November is still early enough that there is still plenty of scholarship money available, still plenty of seats available. And so if you want to talk through your study plan, you can book the free tutoring with me. If you haven't already, you can also grab the free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. The link to grab that cheat sheet is unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. For those just joining, I do these lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. If you find these helpful, please spread the word. I'll be back tomorrow, same time. In the meantime, all the best and take care. Thanks for joining.